Hello, class. Uh, so, jumping right into it, I absolutely hate categories. Hate them. Uh, I can't stand that a person's acceptance is based on what categories that they fit into. I've had too much life experience with that kind of mentality, and it has turned me into an adult that understands that human nature is to categorize, but I also understand that 90% of the people I've dealt with cannot differentiate between acceptance without including those categories. So, first, I want to point out, what is ethnic and ethnicity, and the misconception that it's categorized by your skin color, your religion, whatever the case may be, is completely asinine. It is based off of ancestral, social, cultural, or national experience, and it's a common ground. It really can be anything that you feel is a binding fact between yourself and another person or group. My wife has issues making friends. She's an introvert, and I'm very much not an introvert. Just last week she was like, "How is it so easy for you to make friends? How do you always find something in common with people?" Because she's like, "You're loved. People text you all the time and everything else." I'm a very outward person, and I told her, I was like, "That's because I force people to be my friends. When I meet somebody, I keep going until I find a common ground. When I'm at work and a new staff sergeant comes in, I sit and I talk, and even if they're an introvert, I'll just keep poking until I find a common ground that we have, which is like finding an ethnic group that we are in together. Nobody fits into just one ethnic group. And that's where the whole thing is backwards. And I have a really good quote from this week's reading that I'll share with you a little bit later that ties into it. But I wanna expand on what is ethnic and just how diverse it can be. So there's a book by Arthur Narcisian called Unlubricated, and it's actually about an author in New York City. But there is the timeline of that story is in 2001, and we all know what happened in 2001. And it is a part of the book. There is a part where that author is watching towers fall and everything. That is an Americanized ethnic category. All of us in this class know what happened at that moment, where we were, how it felt as a nation, where we went from there. And right now, that is a national experience that ties us all together. But give it 20, 30 years, and it's going to go away from a national experience and become a generational experience. Because even though it'll be a part of history, it's not going to affect the kids then. And the closest I can relate that to is my mom knows where she was when JFK died. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But, we've had a talk where she's like, when JFK died, it's the same ominence that came with the towers, in the sense of everybody was like, man, what just happened to the president? You knew where you were. You remember the first time you heard it, everything else. And I tried explaining that to somebody else once, and they got all uppity, and they were like, how many people died in the towers and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's my next part of hating categories, is because everybody wants to feel like their category is more important, instead of realizing that you take bare bones away from each category, and what you're left with is emotions that come from the category, and that is where you find common ground. The emotion that came from JFK's assassination to the towers, the ominence that came from it, that is the relation between the two. It doesn't have to be on the same scale. Just like right now on Facebook, I cannot stand how everybody is comparing the gender transformation to American heroes from war. I hate it. Saying that how is Jenner courageous compared to this person who lost an arm and a leg. Both are courageous. Just because nobody's saying that these Marines, Army, whatever branch, nobody's saying they're not courageous. But this is something that is culturally pertinent right now. And that is why I hate categories, because everybody wants to feel like theirs is top dog. So that's a little bit of a rant. But I want to solidify that it doesn't have to be based off of skin color. A good example of that is 8 Mile, Eminem in general, or I'm not sure if kids still do it now or if it was before when I was a kid. But a big thing was when the white kids would be given their ghetto pass. And why is that? Maybe they came from the same neighborhood. They had the same experiences. So it really didn't matter whether you were a black kid, white kid, Hispanic kid. If you were from that community, you were given your ghetto pass. And, that shows that ethnic group was not based off of skin color. It was based off of life experience and living the struggle. For lack of any other cliche term. So another example is military basic training. For our group, that is a common ground. When we're sitting around and there's not a whole lot going on at work, and we got a bunch of new people, a lot of times, without even meaning to, the conversation will shift to, so what was basic training like when you were there? When were you there? Oh, I was there at the same time. This happened while I was there. That is our reference point for commonality. And again, bringing our ethnic group together. So that's my basis of how I view what ethnic is in a nutshell. So now, applying that to literature, our reading for this week, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. First off, I think it's funny because this book is riddled with the stereotypes, and that is one thing our nation has come to hate, is stereotypes. You are either racist or you're discriminating or whatever the case may be if you use stereotypes. And what's funny is they say that maintainers, which is what I am, maintainers in the military are the scum of the military because we are filthy mouths and we're not respectful to each other, and we're not. But that's because we don't let that stuff get us down. We'll use stereotypes as jokes, and we take away the power for that stuff. And, that's what comedy does in an essence. They take away the power from stereotypes by, using it through a medium of entertainment. And we kind of do that in the maintenance world, and we get in trouble for it quite a bit. Anyway, this book is littered with stereotypes in relation to Indians and reservations and reservation life. And comparing it to last week's reading, I kind of wonder how it would be perceived if the author wasn't from some kind of Indian ancestry. If at that point they'd be like, all these stereotypes are horrible. But we all know my opinion on that. I think it was an amazing book. Besides the fact that I have some Indian in me, I've never lived on a reservation. I don't know anything about my past other than it's in my blood. And I'm a mutt, so I don't really claim any one thing. I just claim that I'm a mutt. But where I found relation to this story was when my dad was stationed at Hickam in Hawaii. Worst 4 years of my life. And that was when I was in like middle school. And middle school there, we had cops because there were so many different ethnic groups that there was so much tension. You had the white gang, you had the black gang, you had the Samoan gang, you had the Japanese gang, and this is middle school, mind you. We had stabbing, stuff like that. But that was when I truly learned that I hated categories. That everybody wanted to say, "Oh, this is us," and leave us alone. And the reason I hated it in the beginning was I didn't fit one. I had to lie to fit into one. You know, I had to dye the tips of my hair blonde so I could pretend that I was Hawaiian. You know, I wasn't black enough for the black kids, even though I am part black. You know, I wasn't Indian enough for the Indians. I have no Hispanic in me. And, you know, obviously I'm not completely white. So as a kid, where those categories are so important, I didn't fit into a single one of them. And that's when I became a misfit. So this book kind of, I related to it just because of the struggles this kid was having fitting in. And I felt like it was an amazing book. So what troubles can authors have when we're dealing with ethnic issues? I don't think there should be any. I get that there's judgment on both sides of the validity and stuff like that. But in my opinion, not my experience, my opinion, literature is an experience. When an author puts out a piece of literature, and we'll say we're going to make it more specific when we talk about ethnic literature, it is for you to take that experience. I think that judging it is wrong. For instance, I read Mein Kampf. You know, if there was a book out and it was from the view of a KKK leader, I'd read it. And I don't feel like I would go into it judgmental. I'm going to put myself in that character. Why? Knowledge is power. I think knowing everybody's view is important. In my opinion, if you want to be a KKK member and you think that everybody who's not, you know, Aryan Brotherhood is evil, as long as you're not out killing people, what you believe in your house is your business. As long as you're not hurting anybody else and being, for lack of any other term, a jackass about it, believe what you want in your house. In my house, I believe everybody has that right. But I want the knowledge of knowing what is on everybody's mind. And literature is where they put it all out there, where an author can put you in the driver's seat for an experience. And if more people took knowledge without judgment more, I think we could tear down the categories. So, what is, here, let me get that quote. Now's a good time for us to get on to that. So I just deleted it. Okay, so I can paraphrase it because I liked it that much. In the book, the main character says something that is a perfect example of how I feel human life is, and it's life is a constant struggle between individuality and community. And basically, we are so complex that we want to be different than everybody else, but we want to be a part of the group that is different from everybody else. So we have this desire to put ourselves above other people as an individual, but once we realize how lonely it is there, we're like, well, maybe I could find other people that are just as above everybody else and think the same way. And it's very close-minded. And I don't know if maybe it comes from, you know, being a military brat and being thrown into a cultural mixing pot of people my entire life. But I will go from, you know, listening to Insane Clown Posse one day to listening to the Miley Cyrus CD for 2 weeks on end, you know. Then I'll go to listening to Modest Mouse or reading a romance novel and then going and reading something by Matt Shaw, which is extreme horror. I don't want to fit into one category. I don't like fitting into one category. I like knowing, being a part of all the... I want to be an ethnic supergroup. And with all the political correctness that's coming up and all the overwhelming hostility towards discrimination and stereotypes, I feel like the walls between ethnic group are getting thicker and taller, and it's not fair. That's not really what our nation is about. You know, we're a cultural mixing pot, and you jump those fences. You're like, hey, you know, this was fun for a week. I'll be back next week after I'm done visiting this one, because each group has something that you can take from it, and then you become a mutt like me. So, in closing, I think it's important to realize, especially at our level, you know, I get that maybe other people don't feel this way, but at our level, knowledge is power, and literature is my main means of that power. I'm not a mathematician, you know, I'm not a scientist. I'm a creative writing major. I love to read. I love to write. So that's where I'm going to gain my power from meeting people and from reading these works. So I'm never going to judge an author and their validity or their content. I'm just going to experience it, and I'm going to file it away in my head, and I'm going to internally categorize for my own well-being, but I'm not going to outwardly judge. And I think people need a little bit more of that. You know, self-reflect. You don't have to project it outward constantly, even though our society seems to be hell-bent on making that the norm. So that's my take on it. If you don't take anything else away from it, then take that Scott Jenkins hates categories. Absolutely hates them. I will do everything in my power to not fit a single category. I will try anything new. I will go anywhere. Man, I even went through a stage where I jumped church to church because I wanted to know everything about every religion, even though I'm not religious. So that was my post for this week, and I hope everybody enjoyed.